kidney in red wine, anybody? Or perhaps peri-peri chicken livers could be appearing in some very well-known chicken restaurants sometime soon. In our hunter-gatherer days, the website www.organuary.com states organ meats were highly prized because of how satisfying they were, and organ meats used to be a mainstay of our diets but now rarely show up on the dinner table. Well, joining us now to tell us more about Organuary is Dr. Joanne McCormack, and I must apologise for getting the surname muddled there earlier, Joanne. Firstly, where has the idea of Organuary come about from?
Good evening, Sam. Thanks very much for having me on the programme. It came about because of Veganuary, where people are encouraged to become vegans for January, and they put a lot of emphasis on the environment and how it might help the environment. And it occurred to me that I wanted to do something for the environment, and I wanted our charity to do something for the environment. And we talked about the options, and we thought, well, Organuary seemed to fit the bill. We thought, it's a part of the animal that's extremely nutritious. It's a part that you don't want to go to waste, and it's actually more nutritious than muscle meat. And certainly it packs a lot of vitamins into a very small volume. For instance, you get a lot more vitamin A from liver than you do from carrots, which is what a lot of people think of as being a source of vitamin A.
You said our charity. This is the public health collaboration. What's the history of that? What have you been aiming to achieve with the charity?
Well, the public health collaboration is run by a group of 12 doctors and dietitian. There's a dietitian on our board as well, and we are trying to inform better eating choices, better food choices for the UK. And we're trying to, we speak to government to try and improve the Eat Well plate, for instance, and to improve dietary advice for people with diabetes.
When it comes to trying to persuade people, I suppose, which 50 years ago probably wouldn't have been an issue, persuade people to look more at things like heart and liver and kidney, do people tend to recoil and say, no, I'm not eating that? Or do people generally turn around and say, oh, yeah, I'm keen to give that a go?
Well, I'll probably get both those reactions. In particular, people who used to eat a lot of organ meat often say, oh, I really used to love liver and onions. I think I'll pop into the butcher's on the way home. And then you get people who really don't like the sound of it and say, oh, I don't like organ meat. But actually, quite a few of those people will say, but I do like liver pate. So if it hasn't, there's a group of people who like it if it isn't prepared by them and they just buy it buy it ready-made. So I find that actually a surprising number of people do like organ meat, particularly if it's put into a stew or bolognese sauce, for instance, or if it's mixed up with,
so it's almost not as obvious, not as obvious on the plate.
That's right. And also if somebody else has cooked it. A lot of people don't like handling it. But if it's already been handled, I mean, one of the things you could do is get your butcher to prepare it and mix it with the other meat, and then you can just sort of put the whole thing into the pan and saute it.
Well, why is it that organ meat has fallen out of fashion then? It says on the website that it used to be a mainstay of our diets. Where have we lost the connection with this, very useful part of an animal?
I think it's as we've become more wealthy, we have aspired to buy the more expensive cuts of meat. Ironically, so when in the 70s, people aspired to get a T-bone steak, and maybe a fillet steak, and the cheaper shin of beef and so on was maybe what you had most of the time. But I think over time people have just forgotten about these cheaper cuts, and particular organ meats, which are extremely economical. Like we gave an example on our website of it being about $2.50 for lamb's liver, and for the equivalent weight of lamb shank is £10.
Wow, yeah, that does make a difference.
They are very economical, and these are quite hard financial times for people, particularly people on pensions, and particularly people, people's employment isn't, we hear about 0 hours contracts and people being in and out of work. It's an easy way to get a lot of nutrition from food that's much cheaper than a standard cut of meat.
And as well, if you're raising a family when you've got a lot of mouths to feed and you're trying to think, how can you couldn't give everybody in the family £10 at a meal, but actually £2.50 goes around 4 times and you could feed everyone for the £10 rather than 40. Are there any foods and things people need to avoid in certain situations, for example, if you were pregnant or something like that?
Well, we say on the website to avoid liver if you're pregnant because it's actually so full of vitamin A, you can overdose on vitamin A.
Oh.
Actually 4 ounces of liver could give you enough vitamin A for a whole week if it's beef liver.
So that could just be one meal?
Yes. And I suppose the thing is that you could have small quantities of it. This is not talking about pregnant women, but talking about, other people. You could have it minced with your minced steak and make it into meatballs. That would be very nutritious.
So you could actually use the offal, if you like, to supplement the nutrients in the rest of the food. Because one thing that I had been sort of reading into, particularly when it comes to the vegan diet and things like that, there's quite a lot of concern about ensuring that people get certain vitamins and minerals, which actually our bodies aren't very well adapted to extracting or converting from plants.
Well, that's very true. So the vitamin A in liver is much more available to your body than the vitamin A from, say, carrots. And some people aren't very good at converting the plant vitamin A to the usable vitamin A, particularly diabetic people.
And is this where are these generally the situations where somebody has an underlying health condition that they get talking to you about this? How do you kind of get this information out to the more general public, which wouldn't necessarily be asking these questions? If you're all fit and well, you assume everything's all right, don't you? You carry on as normal.
Well, at the moment, because we're actually, pushing organ meat, so to speak, I suggest people go on the Organuary.com website, and we've got really all the information that's needed there in terms of not just recipes, but about the actual vitamins and minerals that come from the different sorts of organ meat. It's quite I think it's quite a smart little website. It's very simple, easy to read and understand quite quickly. And people can then incorporate organ meats into the diet and have some, there's some really tasty, unusual recipes there that, that we've got from, suggestions from all over the world, really. But really quite inventive.
There was something I found quite interesting whilst I was reading about Organuary, and it's the fact that actually, despite the fact that domestic demand has decreased, the demand for offal outside of the UK is increasing. We're actually exporting a lot of this product. Why is it that other parts of the world recognise the value of this part of a carcass?
I think a lot of it is habit and culture. And so we used to have a culture where we ate a lot of organ meat. Maybe it wasn't cooked very well. Maybe after the war, a lot of people say, they used to eat liver, but their mother used to overcook it and it wasn't very nice. But I was speaking to somebody from Romania, a friend of mine from Romania this week, and she said they eat every single part of the animal. Nothing goes to waste. She said tail, snouts and all. So, and I think maybe in England there has been quite a push for veganism and for vegetarianism, and that's affected the meat industry and people's perception of what you should eat. And I don't think that is so strong in other countries. But what I'd say is that the meat industry in the UK is much more environmentally friendly than the meat industry in many other countries. And the carbon footprint of our meat, because our, say, beef is grass-fed and our beef or cattle drink more rainwater, the carbon footprint, or not the carbon footprint so much as the carbon actually goes back into the soil, and it can be actually carbon neutral to produce beef in the UK. And that's worth thinking about, because a lot of the push behind Veganuary is about environmental concerns. But if our beef industry is much better than a beef industry in America, for instance, we don't need to have the same concerns, or at least we can read into it and have an open mind. So we've put a bit about that on the website as well, about the environmental impact.
Yeah, I find that really quite intriguing. In fact, it was a really interesting read on the website, mainly because if we reduce you can tackle a number of things, can't you? When we're concerned about feeding a growing population and everything else, making more of the food we do produce, reducing waste, making our food chain more efficient, and even to a certain degree lowering food miles and helping to support local abattoirs and things like that. All these kind of things come off the back of quite simply just choosing to buy different parts of the carcass within your regular shop. Do you think there is going to be a better uptake of these things if people were educated differently? Should these things be explored more at school rather than just saying, plant-based diets fine, beef is just this, based on a global average of a statistic, rather than looking locally at your food and your health and your economy and your environment?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's quite a complicated picture in ways. But I think if you look at the evidence critically and without emotion, really, you can see that our beef industry is very different. I mean, my grandfather and then my dad grew up on a farm, and so I go to the same farm all the time where my cousin and my uncle still farm, and I see the cattle there, and they eat. You know, they live on grass in the summer, and they go into the sheds in the winter, and they eat silage. And, that's very different to the pictures or the films I've seen of cattle in America who seem to be on you wouldn't call it a prairie. It's more like a desert. And they're given, some sort of artificial feed. Yeah. And that's very, very different. And I've seen it with my own eyes, how cattle are fed these days in England. And I live on the edge of the country anyway. My house is next to the field, and and then it's going out, it's countryside beyond where I live. So I see cattle there through the summer. They just eat grass. So it is very different. So I think in schools we have to. It's important to think about environmental concerns and actually not take things at face value. And there is a lot of information, simple information on our website about the environmental impact. Like it's said that we've got various aspects of it that we consider, but in particular about how much carbon goes into the soil to produce beef here. And even if you buy ordinary offal in the UK, it's likely to be carbon neutral. Whereas if you buy organic offal, that's likely to put more carbon back into the soil.
Is this just due to the farming system?
Yes, that's right. So
wow. It's really quite a complicated matter, isn't it? But the main thing is we want people to be fit, we want them to be healthy, we want them to be well nourished, we want them to have all the vitamins and minerals they need. Obviously, you couldn't just eat liver all the time. Are we actually talking about balance? You still need vegetables and you need certain elements of meat, because ideally you want a well-balanced omnivore diet. That's what we adapted to and evolved within.
Well, yes. I mean, I think the thing about liver is that you're not going to eat it more than twice a week anyway. You might want to get a bit of heart and put that into your stew instead of liver, just to have a change. But I think the thing is, it is just thinking about incorporating it. Quite a lot of the supermarkets sell it now. When you look around, you see that other people are buying it. So maybe you'd like to buy some yourself. And it's a way of getting a lot of vitamins. It packs a very good nutritional punch, really. You get a lot of vitamins in a very small volume. I'd say just give it a go. And if you're not keen on actually buying it and chopping it up, get it ready prepared, or get some chicken liver pate. That's a good option. If you want to just give it, have some without having to put the time and time into the preparation.
Yeah, well, simple changes. Dr. Joanne McCormack, thank you so much for coming on tonight and telling us about Organuary. Anybody that wants to find out more, the website is organuary.com. And, will there be Organuary 2021? Do you think this is something that... There is a plan to do that. So just to keep it going. I meant to say one thing before I go, and that's It's not the cow, it's the how. How do you get the cow sort of through its life, and how well do you treat it? And then how does that affect the environment? And it's very different in one farm where it's organically produced as to a farm which is
a flat plain in America with no grass on it at all. So
I think our farmers will all stand by the testament of the welfare British animals that are farm assured, are reared under. I mean, our minimum standard is impeccable, frankly, compared to some of the other things that go on. So, yeah, I like that expression. That's a very different way to look at welfare. It's not the cow, it's the how. Dr. Joanne McCormack.
I don't know where it came from. I just heard that yesterday. So, thank you. Thanks very much for having this show, Sam.
You're more than welcome. And hopefully that will encourage one or two of you to just go and try something a little bit different. And perhaps, I don't know, save a little bit of money, perhaps get a little bit more nutrition than you would do, and help the environment at the same time. This is James Morrison's and Nelly Furtado with Broken Strings on God's Own Country File, BBC Radio York.